Hello and welcome to my channel. I've come to read you another short story based on 5 random words, and the random words for this story are this one. First bit, a little bit of news. I've had my 10th short story accepted for publishing. I was going to say publishment. Publication, I think is the word I'm looking for. You'd hardly believe I was a writer, would you? So 10 stories I've managed to get published in the last 3 months, really, in different magazines. So I'm going to do a little featurette at some point about how I achieved this, to help any other struggling writers out there who might want to emulate my success. Anyway, so this is a funny little seasonal ghost story called the Mississauga Ghoul. Mississauga is a small town, it's not that small. It's on Lake Superior, I think, in the northern states. Right, the Mississauga Ghoul. Flynn pushed a button on his watch and the dial glowed pale green. 4:35. One more circuit and he'd be done. Tomorrow he had 3.5 hours drive to Detroit, with maybe a lunch stop in Lansing, and he'd be ready for the big fight. Well, not the big fight. That had been last year. The battle of all battles that had launched Flynn Miller into the big time. Great Lakes Heavyweight Champion 2018. At the age of 32, pushing it for a semi-pro, Flynn had sent an almighty haymaker from out of nowhere, launching that pituitary case Jackson the Ghoul Bradley onto the canvas for a third round count of 10. Okay, there had been a knuckle duster secreted in the glove, hastily removed and concealed by his corner boy, but Flynn had been due the win after all that jeering and baying of Jackson's home crowd, calling Flynn a redneck trailer trash nobody and an old boy. Sure, the black giant from Mississauga had it coming. Flynn pushed on through the diagonal assault of rain becoming sleet, becoming snow, skirting the edge of the Hardy Dam pond. As his feet crunched iced over snow, he swung his fists left and right, close to his face, then wide in a series of 1-2 attacks, all the while feeling the chill seeping through his leggings. He decided he'd turn off the trail at the dam and run as fast as he could along that sometimes dangerous strip of highway back to his brother's shack, where he'd spent the last week mentally preparing himself to defend his title. There would be big money in it for Flynn if he won again. $100,000. Not life-changing money for some, perhaps, but enough to pay off his brother's loan shark and a chunk of his own mortgage. Maybe enough to impress Jenny enough to give their marriage another go. Definitely enough to buy a new bicycle for Ellie Mae. There was no knowing where a windfall like that might carry him. The snow was brutal, chilling his face, despite the muffler and beanie he'd pulled down hard over his ears. He felt his size 11 slipping on the wet leaves beneath the snow and wished he'd taken up his brother's offer of trail shoes. Maybe if he went out again tomorrow morning. Wait a minute. Had he just missed the turning for the road? Flynn should have seen headlights through the gloom by now. Another half hour and it would be pitch black, and of course he'd also turned down a head torch. Flynn wasn't used to proper darkness. You never really got that in Detroit, where the skyscrapers and streetlights cut the skyline into shimmering facets. No, this wasn't right. Flynn had trotted into a small clearing, where the remains of an old boat rotted away like the breastbone of a beached whale. The water must flood this high sometimes, Flynn thought, struggling and failing to get a useful signal on his phone. He'd not passed that boat on his last circuit, but he couldn't have gone far astray. He could turn back and retrace his footsteps, but Flynn hated turning back. Whump! A soft impact hit him between his shoulder blades. A confused bird? No, a circular hole in the new fallen snow contained a hard round snowball, still intact. Thud! Another one bounced off his shoulder, stinging. Man, who the fuck? Smash! The third snowball, more of an ice ball, came from a totally different direction, hitting him full in the forehead and sending him staggering back. When he shook his head free of shattered ice and put a hand there, he came away with a smear of blood. Right, you little fuckers, where are you? Kids, most likely. Locals who gathered at the boat to drink hooch, smoke joints and ambush strangers with stone-filled snowballs. And yet, was that a laugh? An adult laugh? The deep bassy rumble was probably just cars heading over the dam. Shit! Flynn managed to duck in time as another snowball, heavily compacted and filled with gravel, shattered on the trunk of a nearby ponderosa. That had come from an altogether different direction. How many kids were there? It wasn't in him to run away. Flynn was the Great Lakes heavyweight champion 2018 after all. 6'4" and 206 pounds of hard-earned muscle and sinew wasn't going to run from a bunch of kids throwing snowballs, no matter how loaded the missiles were, or well directed. Hope you know who you're messing with, boys. Come out and show your faces. Flynn compacted a snowball between his meaty fists, adding gloves to the list of things he regretted not borrowing. The icy snow chilled his fingers and added an ache to the gnawing fear he was beginning to feel. He was just about to heft the snowball in some arbitrary direction when a missile caught him in the back of the head, sending him staggering. His foot caught tree roots and he sprawled over the carcass of the disused skiff. Before he could rise, another snowball smashed into his jaw, and Flynn felt something crack there, a sliver of raw pain shooting up into his skull. He tried to cry out, but sound didn't come. A sixth ball of ice smacked into his larynx, rendering attempts to scream impossible, as Flynn staggered to his feet and spun around, frantically searching for his attackers. There was nothing but a moving smear of shadow behind the trees on the far side of the clearing. A hazy shape there lacked form, but looked nothing like a child. Too bulky, too weighty. A snowball hurtled out of the gloom, catching a shard of headlight. The road must be close. The snowball seemed to slow down as Flynn tried to spin around to evade it. He ducked, and the snowball mirrored his move, impossibly swerving, and looking like nothing so much as a gloved fist as it barreled into his nose and eyes, blinding him and breaking his septum. Flynn felt himself whimpering now as he half staggered, half crawled out of the clearing the way he'd come, following his own footsteps, filling them with blood as the echo of a deep Canadian laugh rolled between the trees. The shape of a large man formed before him, out of the absence of snow, an invisible presence revealed. The Mississauga Ghoul had come to claim his stolen title. It wasn't fair. How could Flynn have known the knockout would cause a delayed hemorrhage? The Ghoul had died 18 hours after the fight. There had been plenty of time for his manager, his trainer, his wife, or someone to have seen the symptoms and rushed him to the ER. Okay, Flynn had cheated, but that massive ape had provoked him. The last snowball found him as Flynn got back onto his feet on the trail on top of the embankment. It came floating across the water, impossibly, inescapably driving his left eye deep into its socket and pulverizing Flynn's skull as he slipped and toppled through the icy veneer of the freezing reservoir. An invisible crowd roared. As the Great Lakes heavyweight champion 2018 sank into the pristine water, beams from the headlights and taillights of passing cars pulsed over the shattered ice above him. Red for the glove that killed him, white for the canvas that embraced his final fall. So there you go. Nice little scary ghost story for an October evening. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. As I say, I shall return soon with a little bit of insight into how to get short stories published in literary magazines by dogged, relentless persistence, mainly. And yeah, thanks for listening. I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.